are the co-founders of Dipper.
Dipper is a technology platform that guides professionals of color to a better workplace, one review at a time.
Dipper is your safe space. It is the time for you to share your voice with a community that you are a part of. Visit us and join today at ourdipper.com.
Hello and welcome to all of our Dipper viewers. Hi ladies, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Doing great today.
Good. I'm so happy that both of you are here. Well, welcome to the virtual launch of ourdipper.com. We are hosting virtual events throughout April. So please join us every Tuesday and Thursday this month to participate in our Shut Up and Listen themed events. Each event will feature top DEI thought leaders to discuss engaging topics impacting workplace culture. Now, this is a perfect opportunity to share more about Dipper, a tech platform for all people of color, Black, Brown, Asian, and Indigenous professionals of all levels, including C-suite, to rate and review their workspaces. Members have profiles and can access the inside scoop on which companies to join and stay away from. Members can also engage with other members on Dipper's newsfeed. So today we will be discussing the misconceptions of white supremacy. Such a triggering word. First, let's introduce our influential guests, Dr. Janice Gassam and De-Dee Loftin Davis. I'll start by introducing Dr. Janice, and my partner Jacinta will introduce De-Dee. So Dr. Janice Gassam is an anti-racist educator, DEI consultant, writer, workshop facilitator. She has collaborated with companies such as Google, Amazon, and Nordstrom's. She also teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in human resource management and industrial organizational psychology. She has authored 2 best-selling books, Dirty Diversity and The Pink Elephant. So please check them out. They are incredible books. And we will be bringing her back on to specifically talk more about her books. Also tune into her podcast at the Dirty Diversity Podcast. On to you, Jacinta.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Netta. And we also have De-Dee Loftin Davis, who is a racial equity consultant for the federal government, speaker, researcher, policy creator, and educator. She is a trusted advisor to executive leaders, community leaders, and senior law enforcement. She aims to dismantle white supremacy culture in the workplace and law enforcement. She is a proud alum of Lincoln University and HBCU. I didn't know that. That's my family who went there, and has coached and mentored students at the university. She has volunteered as an NAACP community organizer for 21 years to fight for social justice. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. We're really excited to dive in with both of these influential women. So let's dive into the topics of misconceptions of white supremacy. Can one of you or both of you kind of give us some explanation into a couple misconceptions of white supremacy that you've seen, observed, heard, or come across?
Sure. De-Dee, you want to go first?
Definitely. I'm ready. Because we only got 30 minutes, y'all. So
I know, because you're like, go.
Put the coffee down, people. All right.
I know.
People think that white supremacists only wear hoods. No. They wear heels.
Oh.
They come in the office, okay? They say, you know what? You're 1 minute, 30 seconds late. You know? It's a perfectionism. It's a culture. It's an idea of superiority. It's a system. It's not just people. It's a system and systems of oppression. It gives the image of, again, perfectionism. You can make no mistakes. We have so much history proving that white culture and white people are the best and we are superior. It goes back to, again, colonialism. So just addressing all of that and unpacking all of that and saying we're going to dismantle the system that has lied to us for over 400 years and has kept us down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fired.
Yeah. No, I would just like to add on to what Dee said. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about white supremacy is that only white people perpetuate it. I think that a lot of what I've seen in corporate is people of color adopting white supremacist ideologies in order to ascend in corporate. There is this like myth that there can only be one person of color in a certain level within an organization. So I think that sometimes we purposely or unknowingly do things to harm other people of color. There's a lot of anti-blackness. I think anti-blackness, white supremacy are like different sides of the same coin. So I think that like we also have to recognize ways that we've played into the system. I played into it as well. I used to sort of like adopt this idea that I had to look a certain way to be professional, and that Black people had to look a certain way in order to be respected and to be professional. I played a lot into like respectability politics and things like that. And I think all of those are tools that white supremacy uses to keep us divided.
Yeah. And both of you are spot on. It's definitely an ideology. It's a practice, right? It's a principle. And it plays out in different forms. And I think both of you hit it on the nail. A lot of times people think white supremacy is, hey, just the KKK or saying the N-word, when it is, and to your point, Dee-Dee, it is so much deeper than that, right? And to your point, Janice, we play it out. We play it out as, you know, as well. So that leads me into my next question. What are some common practices that allow white supremacy culture to remain the norm?
Oh, to Dr. Janice, I'm giving you respect because put respect on my name.
I got so much to say about this. I think in the space that we're in, what I see a lot of is just like white-centric education, where we're asked to come into spaces and help white people understand racism. But I feel like that is not enough to help the most marginalized people feel safe. So there isn't a lot of consideration for like, how do we center the most marginalized? It's always like, how do we educate white people so that they don't feel uncomfortable? How do we make sure that we're saying things so that it's palatable to them? And I think that simply like operating under what Toni Morrison called the white gaze is how we continue to perpetuate white supremacy, is like doing everything with white people in mind and not thinking about how our actions and how what we're doing is going to impact the most marginalized, because essentially that's why we're doing the work that we're doing, to help better the conditions for everybody. So I see a lot of this in the space. I see even in the books that get amplified, even in the people that get amplified, there's a lot of like white centering. There's this idea that if you let a white person say something, it'll be better received. But I'm like, do we want something to be better received? Like, is that ultimately what we want? Or do we want change to happen? So I see a lot of that. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Dee-Dee.
And to your point, my sister, okay, we need a whole entire hour to unpack colorism.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, that's a whole,
whole entire like hour and a half. And then an inter-minority racism between Black and brown, you know, going from, you know, supervisor to supervisor, and preferring the white-centered narrative, like preferring this culture over another culture based on the likeness and closeness to whiteness and white proximity as people can be. So let's, you know, they speak like, you know, we are familiar with their speak, and they're articulate, and their voice is non-threatening, and they don't have bass in their voice, especially the women. I'm like, put the bass back in your voice. If you have the experience, if you have the education, if you have just the expertise, speak with authority. You know, do not coalesce, do not back down, do not shrink to white-centered thought ideology, because people are looking for information on anti-racism. Getting back to Dr. Janice and her book, I haven't read it yet, but I plan to. It's on my list. I got 20 so far on my deck. But getting back, I think the last, and Forbes as well, the last statistic we got is that anti-racism education, the resource and the desire for it is up 6,800%. What? And we're shrinking back? And we're considered experts. And at the same time, we have to balance that up with some Black people and brown people, which is fair, do not want to educate. white
Yeah.
people on our blackness, and they don't have to. We should not be expected to educate unless you're one of us, of course, which we do our career. But if it's not your career, do not, white people, come close to the computer right now, okay?
You're like, come here.
Ask your black and brown colleagues to educate you, okay? Go buy a book, Dr. Janice's book, okay? Go listen to a podcast. Go to dipper.com, sign up, and hear that. Stop terrorizing and triggering your coworkers.
Yeah.
Calm down. Calm down.
No, that is spot on. And I think you tied it to the importance of the education, the importance of us as a people also feeling comfortable, speaking out, and us not being responsible for, we don't have to carry that weight of that being the educator. Like, I got kicked out of a 10th grade history class because the history teacher, when she called on me to educate the class about the Black experience in America, I told her I was not on the payroll. And so I got kicked out of the 10th grade history class. And, but I also had a mama who showed up and made sure I got my seat right back at my desk that she paid for. And it was fine. But how can the workplace really create, not the workplace? We can't have our mama show up at work. Well, we could, but we won't. But how can the workplace create this culture that really is free of white supremacy, or really calls some accountability when white supremacy is identified? How can the workplace really help support that?
Well, depending on your workplace, and I always say, hold your workplace accountable if they made a public Black Lives Matter statement. Okay, you made that. Let me call you on that. Let's normalize blackness in the workplace. Let's talk about protective hairstyles. How about Delaware being last week, not the first, but another state to allow the Crown Act? It's 2021, and we're still having to have our hair litigated, our natural hairstyles litigated. Let's talk about that, unpack that. Allow employees, to have a rest, especially Black employees, to have rest from racial trauma at work. Let's talk about that. Give us time to heal from that. Create space for that. We have George Floyd, the trial going on. I'm triggered and I'm traumatized every daggone day. 2020 wore me out. Now I'm just like, I'm ready again to keep uprooting this racism because of what we see in the newspapers and what we see, I'm dating myself, I'm older, what we see on podcasts and what we see, of course, in the news. Why are businesses boarding up as if we're not going to expect, like Dr. Jacinda said, disappointment. We're always bracing for disappointment and then for action, and then other communities follow suit. But why are you boarding up if you're not expecting the inevitable that, he may go free for killing a Black man with a video, with witnesses, with police, with law enforcement, with EMTs?
Yeah. I want to take a step back because we definitely have our viewers that are typing away right now. And I'm here sitting down, just intrigued by both of you, right? And I want everyone to kind of understand, how did y'all get started, right? In the line of work that you do, because De-Dee, you had shared this, with me before we got on live, but I want to hear that from both of you. How did you even get into the work that you're doing now?
So
that passion is real.
I think for me, I just, I always was stuck between this idea that I was the only Black person in mostly white spaces. And then also my parents immigrated to the US from Cameroon. So my parents are of one culture. I'm trying to navigate being the only, being a first generation American in mostly white spaces and not really understanding my parents' culture. And then navigating so I think for me, I've always been interested in race, and I never realized the nuances of race, and colorism wasn't something that I knew about or understood until I was in mostly Black spaces. So just even navigating and understanding that, I've always been really fascinated by racial categories, and then seeing what my parents went through when they arrived. They experienced a lot of racism. We actually used to live in Minnesota, and the Midwest is, to me, one of the most racist places in the country, because it's they have this Midwest nice. So everyone thinks they're so nice. And We had difficulty selling our house because people would walk in and see pictures of a Black family, and no one wanted to live in a house where Black people lived. So like my parents experienced so much racism. So I think that I've always kind of like in my mind wanted to figure out how to create a better world based on my parents' experiences. And I think that's what really got me into this space and trying to do the work that I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
De-Dee, how did you get started?
So for those who follow me on LinkedIn, if you heard it before, sorry, I'm sorry. But, you know, as a kid, many of you know that my father was murdered. And even that has racist undertones, but he was murdered. And that left my family financially devastated. We were, of course, in the projects growing up. We didn't have a house to live in. We lived, like, of course, in welfare and food stamps. This is going back, I'm 52 people, hate to shock you, but I'm 52 years old, okay? So that's the project. I don't know.
See, that's Black Don't Crack, because you look amazing. You look amazing.
You know,
thank you. Look like you're in your 40s to me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But growing up, you know, in the projects in the 1970s, and you know, on my first day of school, kindergarten, I had my yellow and white dress on with the white flowers on, my Afro puffs because I was militant, and I had my black little, you know, platform shoes on. I walked my 3 blocks to school, really excited, in a white school district because in the Black neighborhood projects, we were only like little marble in an all white sea, you know, houses and you know whatever you have. You walked into the school. I walked into the school, and my first day of school, 4 little white boys had stones in their pockets. They were in an elevated position, standing on stairs, and they threw stones at me and said, "Go home, N-word." I was devastated because I wanted to learn. I wanted to read. I was excited. My sister's older than me, and she was teaching me how to read it. And I was excited about going to school. Ran home crying, bleeding on my yellow, pretty dress and Afro puffs. My grandmother saw me, a 300-pound Black woman. Yes. Said, "What happened to you?" I told her. She said, "Oh, no. Okay. Clean me up, grab my hand, walk me back to the school 3 blocks. I don't want to go, Grandma. No, you're going back. We're going to learn today. Took me back to my classroom, asked my teacher to come back kindly, and she showed her me and said, "This is what your all-white class did to my granddaughter." And that day, my grandmother taught my white teacher and my all-white class on racial equity and anti-racism and how my lived experience traumatized me. That's how I got started. I got involved in NAACP as a teenager because, again, I was militant, you know, and they were so loving and so kind and educated me and taught me. I volunteered during my teenage years. We would go to more protest march and we would just speak at community events. That morphed into going into HR, getting my degree. And then as I spoke in HR and did different teachings and trainings, people, of course, my supervisor said, "You should go into diversity and inclusion." I said, "But they don't talk about Black people. They don't address our needs." And when I found racial equity, I jumped with it. And then I went to my own consulting business, and here I am.
Wow.
Amazing.
Y'all give me chills. Seriously.
It's great. It's great how like their childhood experiences really help identify like who you are as a woman and as an adult, and then how you're impacting future generations. Like, thank you for that work. Sorry to interrupt you, Netta. Go ahead, girl.
Yeah, no. You know, and I'm going to say the other thing is your grandmother taking you back to school. She was also giving you that power and showing you, oh, no, you never have to back down, right? And so you have it. That fight is in your blood. And someone said, MacArthur, he said, "Wow, sad it takes our experiences to show people what we need." And that's the sad part, right? Like there's so much trauma that exists through a lot of these experiences that we talk about. But what advice would both of you give to a Black or brown professional that feels like they have to shrink themselves and deny their accomplishments to make others feel more comfortable?
I would say don't shrink back. You're in that workplace for a reason. Out of all the applicants, you got that position. So you have the talent, you have the lived experience, you have the experience. use that. Use your authentic voice and couple it with your gifts and your excellence. And if that workplace is no longer serving you, then it's time to go. Make a career path, a strategy to go on to your next, because there's so many options now for Black and brown people, and more corporations, especially C-suite, is seeing that. And you're seeing more initiatives for retention of Black and brown people. And of course, pipelines, use that for your advantage. Do the research, do the work, because it's for you, it's for your family. Do not shrink back on your excellence.
Yeah, well, I love that. Do not shrink back on your excellence. Dr. Janice, what do you have for us today? She froze in a bit.
Oh, I think we did lose her.
Just for a second.
Yeah.
You gave us a whole word. Dr. Janice said, "Hey, let me." She's back. She's back.
There you go.
I think that was my internet. I heard the question and I heard De-Dee answering it, and then my internet just said, "Not today."
Okay.
But would love to hear what your advice would be.
Oh yeah, so I think that Black and brown professionals should stand in their power. Where like what my parents experienced 20, 30 years ago is exactly the same thing that a lot of professionals are experiencing now, but we have the internet. And I think that is what gives us so much power. Companies don't want to mess up. They don't want to end up going viral for doing something stupid. They don't want a lawsuit. So I think that the power is in the hands of the people, so to speak. And I think that if you are experiencing an environment that is toxic, where there's a lack of accountability, there are all of these things, the most powerful thing you have is your voice. And you can go onto social media and share your story. And I think that the fact that other people are experiencing something similar is what will help you to kind of get through that experience. I'm so like, my heart goes out to anybody who's in those types of environments, because I know what that's like. But I think that what is really going to help us get stronger is the community that we build, and the other folks who are experiencing those same things, and us using our voice, because us using our voice is going to make it better for the generations who come after us. So I think it's so important. And I know, as a person whose parents really emphasized, like my dad was big with like, just get a good job, keep your head down, get educated, and that's all you need to do to live the American dream. But even when you do that, that is never enough, So I think that like understanding that I have a voice and I'm so powerful in the ability to use my voice. All of us have that ability. And that's what makes us stronger, not being willing to back down, and being comfortable using your voice. Because I think many of us are scared. We don't want to risk our job. We don't want to risk our comfortability. We feel like we could just kind of endure it. And that's why so many Black women die 6 years earlier. I just heard a stat yesterday that Black women on average die 6 years earlier due to all of these health issues, because we're taking on all of this trauma we're putting it onto ourselves, and we're not giving ourselves the space and the ability to say, this is not an environment that deserves me and that I should be around. So I think that it's so important to use our voices, and social media can be a powerful way to do that.
Yeah. No, go for it. Jacinta, did you have something?
Oh no, I was going to say that makes complete sense, and that just using that collective power. And I saw someone comment that like all these different diversity and inclusion roles are popping up, but companies aren't doing anything different. Or even we hear people talk about, well, some companies are doing things different. How do we highlight that? And that's a big part of why Netta and I built Dipper, because we felt this collective power, this collective voice, this transparency, and the safe space was critical. And like, I remember Netta, when we were talking to CNN, she was like, this is a life and death matter. Like, we're not just surviving and thriving. Like, we don't need to just be worried about surviving and thriving. Like, we are dying. We are not only being murdered on our own streets, but we are dying in our own homes because of poor health that the toll and trauma of racism has had on our bodies, and that's why these conversations are just, I just feel like I had 5 cups of coffee, but it was good for me. Like, this is good. So thank you so much.
Thank you all, Dipper and Netta, and just thank you for Dipper, because we need it. It's an oasis for us.
Absolutely.
You know, I think back to, like, you know, for our community, just speaking to my Black brothers and sisters, entrepreneurship is in our blood. From slavery, we took the scraps from slavery and we built businesses, from food to grocery stores to farming, and hair, and some of us became millionaires. You know, tap into your gifts. What are you great at? Not just good at, but what you're great at. And find a way to monetize that. Entrepreneurship is in our blood. Tap into that, because you have a community here. You have Dipper, you have LinkedIn. Start your platform there and go from there. You know, why go in all sick and traumatized to a work that could care less about you? If you died, will fill your position in less than a week. Find out and do a self-inventory on you.
Woo. All right. I was going to say something, but I can't even say anything. My cup is filled.
Jesus, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Sing.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for this word. Thank you to our viewers and for all of your comments. We see it coming through, and thank you for engaging with us. To all professionals of color, connect with us on ourdipper.com right now by signing up and completing your profile on ourdipper.com so that we can unpack all the gems our guests dropped today. Also, be sure to rate and review every single company that you have ever worked for on ourdipper.com. This is the way that we're going to guide each other to the best places to work and to places to stay away from. So thank you for joining, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.